This is perhaps the most important question we never ask ourselves. We live in a world where we often excel at crafting stories that shield us from confronting uncomfortable truths. We downplay our insecurities, exaggerate our accomplishments, and convince ourselves that we are content, all while turmoil simmers beneath the surface. In a world rife with self-deception, Fyodor Dostoevsky addresses the struggle. Above all, don't lie to yourself. The man who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to a point where he cannot distinguish the truth within him or around him, and thus loses all respect for himself and for others. So, what lie is Dostoevsky referring to here? It's a lie we convince ourselves of based on what we desire. These are the lies we tell ourselves that seem harmless on the surface. However, these seemingly innocuous deceptions contain cracks in the foundation of true reality. Dostoevsky is highlighting the concept of self-sabotage, which can lead to our own destruction when we start believing our own lies. Aldous Huxley articulates this idea beautifully. We protect our minds by an elaborate system of abstractions, ambiguities, metaphors, and similes from the reality we do not wish to know too clearly. We lie to ourselves in order that we may still have the excuse of ignorance. Dostoevsky is emphasizing a crucial point. How can you truly grow if you aren't honest about your weaknesses? How can you forge genuine connections with others if you're entangled in a web of self-deception? Self-deception begins small, perhaps by ignoring a weakness, avoiding a hard truth, or exaggerating a success to boost our self-esteem. However, when these small lies are repeated over time, they grow into a habit, creating a gap between who we truly are and who we believe ourselves to be. When we lie to ourselves, we are essentially constructing a version of reality that feels comfortable. For instance, we might convince ourselves that we're happy in a job that isn't fulfilling, or that we have no faults in a relationship, even if we sense otherwise deep down. This self-deception may appear protective, but it ultimately ensnares us. Over time, the lies we tell ourselves begin to feel real, making it increasingly difficult to recognize and confront the truth. This leads to confusion. We become unsure of what is genuine and what is part of the narrative we have invented. Dostoevsky warns us that if we persist in this pattern, we risk losing touch with reality and ourselves. Our relationships suffer because people connect best with those who are honest and self-aware. Without this honesty, our connections with others remain superficial, and our personal growth is stunted as we live behind a shield of our own making, rather than confronting and addressing our true issues. In essence, while self-deception may shield us from immediate discomfort, it ultimately results in a life that feels empty and inauthentic. Now, what is the real truth? That's another interesting question that should arise in every mind. People often think the knowledge they have is the truth, but it's not. Having knowledge isn't an answer at all. There's a clear difference between truth and knowledge. Having knowledge is a pathway, a map toward the truth, but the map is so much bigger. Fyodor Dostoevsky emphasizes that the greatest lie is the belief that you possess knowledge of the truth when, in fact, you don't. Socrates said something about this. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. In current generations, people have adopted unique approaches to life. There are nihilists, preachers of religion who don't follow their own religious teachings, and many more. These individuals are all lying to themselves. They haven't found peace in their lives. The constant pressure of accepting a fate they haven't chosen is killing them from the inside. It's preventing them from seeing the real truth. In Dostoevsky's words, a man who lies to himself comes to a point where he does not discern any truth either in himself or anywhere around him, where he loses all respect for himself and for others. This lack of truth means that he can no longer fully trust or respect himself. He begins to see himself as flawed or hypocritical, which gnaws at his sense of integrity. As self-respect diminishes, it naturally affects how he views others. Without a foundation of respect for himself, he projects his cynicism outward, making it difficult to appreciate the value or authenticity of others. The bitterness he feels towards his own flaws colors his perception of those around him, leading him to see others as equally unworthy of respect. Because he lacks self-respect, he assumes that others are just as untrustworthy or flawed. Without respect, he also struggles to form genuine connections, as relationships are built on mutual respect and trust. He begins to view others through a lens of suspicion or detachment, perceiving everyone as playing a role rather than being authentic. When self-respect is absent, he loses the foundation that makes relationships meaningful. This ultimately leads to isolation, where love and deep bonds become nearly impossible, as love requires a belief in both oneself and others. Without respect, there is no space for love to grow. Now, one more question arises. How can I know when I'm lying to myself? One of the best ways to recognize self-deception is to pay attention to your automatic emotional reactions to what others say or do. For instance, if you feel offended or get angry at that person doing something ridiculous, or if you feel the urge to defend or justify yourself, these reactions often reveal underlying insecurity, which we mask by projecting an air of certainty. To maintain that certainty, we may end up lying to ourselves. If someone calls you an 8-headed alien, you wouldn't be bothered because you're confident it's not true. But if someone comments on your weight and you're insecure about it, that hits harder. Consider a political discussion. If you feel compelled to react strongly to what someone like John says, ask yourself why. Political and religious views can be challenging to feel entirely secure about, and to cover up that uncertainty, people often act overly certain. They may ignore the complexities of opposing arguments, lie to themselves, and become upset or defensive. Not being able to remain friends with someone who disagrees is another indication of this self-deception. So, how can we avoid falling into this trap? One reason I love Fyodor Dostoevsky is his positive outlook on life. He envisioned a world where joy, compassion, and beauty exist in everything. He famously stated that beauty will save the world. Dostoevsky aimed to eradicate the negative aspects of society, such as racism, inequality, and nihilistic thoughts, which ultimately lead people to chaos. Not lying to yourself is another pathway to living a happy and content life. But the question remains, how can we achieve this? To address self-deception and gain personal clarity, Fyodor Dostoevsky's works encourage a journey of deep self-awareness, introspection, and a commitment to uncovering the truth. His novels, especially Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov, explore how characters are often ensnared by self-deception through unresolved guilt, hidden desires, and societal pressures. Through their inner conflicts and moral dilemmas, Dostoevsky forces readers to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves, exposing the complexities of human nature. One of the key examples of this theme is Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment, who initially justifies his crime through intellectual reasoning, but soon finds himself trapped in a cycle of guilt and self-delusion. His journey illustrates that escaping self-deception requires a brutally honest look at one's motives and values, breaking down the rationalizations that mask personal flaws. For Dostoevsky, true self-awareness means acknowledging and accepting the contradictory forces within oneself. Characters like Ivan Karamazov from The Brothers Karamazov embody this struggle, balancing intellectual skepticism and moral responsibility, ultimately revealing that self-awareness involves confronting difficult inner realities and reconciling conflicting aspects of one's personality. Dostoevsky suggests that avoiding self-deception requires humility and a willingness to face one's own limitations, even when painful. This path aligns with a sense of existential responsibility, where one accepts the consequences of their actions, rather than hiding behind illusions. By stripping away self-justifications and societal conditioning, Dostoevsky proposes that individuals can break free from self-imposed traps and develop a more genuine understanding of themselves. However, escaping self-deception and achieving personal clarity doesn't end with self-awareness alone. It must be accompanied by a continual expansion of knowledge, a key element in personal growth. The more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to understand, fostering humility and a readiness to explore new perspectives, cultures, and religions. Uncovering truth requires engaging deeply with various philosophies and belief systems, which help reveal universal themes of human values, struggles, and aspirations. For Dostoevsky, truth is not a simple endpoint, but a lifelong journey, requiring the courage to question even one's own beliefs. By immersing oneself in knowledge, whether through philosophy, literature, science, or religion, Dostoevsky suggests that individuals can dismantle the layers of self-deception that often cloud their sense of self and purpose. This pursuit not only leads to a deeper connection with oneself, but also cultivates a sense of shared human experience, guiding individuals toward a more authentic universal truth. Through such a journey, individuals can finally ground their personal identity in a truth that transcends illusions, leading to a richer understanding of both themselves and the world around them.